Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast for Black Women Connect Vancouver. Girl, you know it. So I'm the founder of Black Women Connect Vancouver, which started in 2017. And Black Women Connect Vancouver is a collective of women who come to inspire, empower, and leverage our strengths and embrace our diverse experiences. It is a community where we can build meaningful relationships and celebrate the beauty of our Black womanhood. I hope that you enjoy it.
Hi everyone! Welcome back to another episode of Girl, You Know It. I am one of the hosts, Palasam.
And I am Elle.
And today we have a wonderful guest with us. But before we introduce our guest, today we're talking about relationships that are not heterosexual. So folks who identify outside of that and kind of experiences of that. I mean, I have my own experiences, but I also wanted to have our wonderful guest, Nyarai, here to share what her experiences have been. And I know Nyarai from a concert that I was walking to all by myself. Yes, that is how we met. So we met, I was walking to a Jamila Woods concert, and I was going by myself. And as I was walking down the street, there's these like group of Black people, and they're all turning around and like, "Yes, girl, yeah, you're doing it, yeah." And so I'm like, "Oh, there must be somebody behind me who knows them." They're like, "No, don't turn around, it's you."
It's you.
And I was like, "Okay, this is I'm definitely partying with these people." So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Yes, I had actually forgotten that's how I met you. That's really cool. That was an amazing night, meeting people through concerts. Hopefully we can bring that again. But hi everyone, I'm Nyarai. I identify as queer/bisexual, and I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I work also for Colored the Trails in terms of outdoor advocacy. So I kind of have my foot in different things, but I'm really trying to just basically, I think like most people, cultivate a life that they love and move forward like that way. Because you see people living their dreams, you're like, why can't I do that, right? So yes.
Exactly. I didn't know that you were working for Color the Trails. That's awesome. I was like, wow, Nyarai is really passionate about this, but that's sick.
Yeah. Kind of just there part-time right now, but it's fun. I love the outdoors and just being in nature too. Nature's so calming for me. So.
You are a renegade. Y'all should watch Nyarai's stories. They're mountain biking. People are just out there in the trails. Gugum. I'm like, nah. I don't know. I'm just getting myself around to being able to travel all over the city on my bike. I can't imagine the routes. If I slip with my feet,
Oh, it's fine. We're all beginners in some way, shape, or form. I think getting started is like the most important thing. So if you start and you enjoy it and you're consistent, I kind of have my foot in different things I enjoy. I love hiking. Hiking, I think, is like my first passion when it came to the outdoors. But biking, I do have a road bike as well. So if you ever want to go bike around the city, let me know.
let's do it. We'll be the biking. We'll start it. Oh no, there already is. Isn't there Black Panther Cycling Club or something
There
like that?
is, but I haven't seen them post anything for this summer. I know they were doing stuff last summer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if you're watching this, anybody from there, we are ready. We're already here. We have our bikes. We're ready to join y'all. So today we're going to be talking, like I said earlier, about, folks who identify outside of being heterosexual, like myself as a queer person as an example. And then obviously Nyarai mentioned as well. My first question that I want to ask right from jump is, you mentioned before we started recording that it's taken you a long time to get to this point of like feeling this confident, understanding yourself, and actually being able to live, like you just said, your best life, but more so even in like your identity in that way. What were some of the biggest, I guess, challenges to overcome in order for you to feel like this is something that I can be outwardly and I can stand up in my skin like that?
I guess like most people, how we grow up and our background greatly influences like how we perceive the world. Even if it's not our, I guess, core belief, it's something that has been like imposed on us. So for me, I grew up in a very conservative country. I grew up in Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe is very conservative, ultra Christian. Like most African countries, like homosexuality is like against the law, like people talk down on it. So when you grow up around that and you kind of see that, I didn't even think it was an option, like exploring my sexuality wasn't even something I put in my mind, even though I've noticed maybe I was attracted to people, like people who weren't men. I was noticing women, attracted to women, but like actually like moving on those like kind of like attractions, I just didn't do it. And when I did, which was probably in my very, very early 20s, like 2021, I felt bad, like a lot of shame, a lot of guilt just kind of like flooded over me. And I was just like, no, like I can't do this. Not that I would go to hell, but it terrified me, simply because of what I'd been taught. And even like in my like mid 20s, I remember like, I sometimes say this is the last like very straight guy I dated, but like I was in like a entanglement. And like where it really, I think it could have been something like solid if I'd moved forward with it. But I remember just at the back of my head having this like fear of like, oh my God, what if I haven't explored like all there is to explore? What if there's more for me? But at the same time, I was like, but that more terrified me because I didn't consider it as normal. But it's like, we all know that's programming. It's not a real thing. And I remember talking to one of my friends, and she was in the queer community, and she really like pushed me. She brought me out to like my first like lesbian bar parties, like Babes on Babes.
Oh, Babes on Babes is another situation, y'all. Hey,
she took me to like my first like gay parties, and she like encouraged me, and we like talked through it. And she's like, yo, like just explore, see what's out there, and you never know. But even then, it's still been a journey. You're like, oh, okay, so I am queer. When I first dated a woman, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And like, you're just like, oh, I feel so seen. I feel like I've never actually connected with, even with dating men, like the way I connect with like maybe a woman. I was like, oh my God. And after that, I still kind of dated and prioritized dating women, or like non-binary folks. But even then, there's still like that nagging fear. Apparently, like internalized homophobia or queerphobia doesn't really like go away. Or it takes a long time to kind of like get it out of your system. I came across a concept called compulsory heterosexuality like 2 weeks ago, and it blew my mind. So,
wow.
As to why it could be like that difficult for like mainly for women or women identifying folks to like get through like accepting dating like other genders, or same genders, but
Yeah.
it's a wild journey, y'all. That's all I can say that.
It absolutely sounds like a wild journey. I feel like even before I was confident enough, because I've only ever explored my sexuality fully here, where I'm far away from my family, where I'm not in the confines of my culture, people lurking and looking and asking questions or whatever the case might be. And I feel like, it's given me that opportunity to be independent and explore. But I definitely resonate with what you're saying. I mean, I feel like I felt shame for sex in general, let alone, actually trying to explore all of these different aspects, that feel good, or that my intuition says, maybe this is a road that you should go down, right? Is that fear of like, oh, well, if I'm able to experience life at my happiest, at my fullest, or even experience this pleasure, like it must be so wrong because apparently you can't be that happy or experience that much pleasure for yourself and just for yourself, and almost in this like selfish way or self-serving way. is how we've kind of dealt with it. But that term that you mentioned, compulsory heterosexual, is that correct?
Yeah,
What does
yeah,
that
that's
mean?
it. I probably, off the top of my head, can't state the proper full definition, but when I came across it, it was YouTube videos. It was like a person who she identified as bisexual, maybe for like majority of her early 20s. Then she was about to get married, and she was like, I think I'm actually gay, like full lesbian. And so she called off like her engagement. It's a wild story. And yeah, she called off her engagement. And so she called it like late bloomer lesbianism. But I guess like her YouTube followers kept sending her this like document or whatever. And it's like a master doc that just goes over compulsory heterosexuality, which is pretty much like just the notion of society has kind of placed a normal relationship on everybody. It's what we see mainly reflected in media. It's what we learn in our families. And if you come from a conservative background, that's all you see. That's all you're programmed to like understand and know. And anything beyond that, you're kind of like, I don't know about this. And that's like just ingrained. So it talks about how even maybe as like a lesbian person, you could still be attracted to men and you don't understand why. It's just because in society, that's men are like what you aspire to.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Because, when you start flashing back into like all the people you've dated and your experiences, you're just like, oh, this is where I maybe like didn't honor myself and I didn't understand what was happening and why that was. So just I guess in terms of like a self-healing journey, it's just been like, oh my God, that's crazy. So
Wow.
always learning, always growing.
Yeah, and I feel like our brains are so brilliant and like are so masterfully like they can like make these connections and whatever. So like unlearning is a really hard process in general for anything, right? Like you think you're like deconstructed from a certain thing, and then you hear a song, or you like have it, and then all of a sudden you're back in that thing. You're like, why am I feeling all this shame? Why am I feeling all this like guilt? And you're like, I know, like back to what you were saying, Melissa, but like, how come we can't be happy in our fullest, in our most optimal state? Because that's seen as selfish. But I'm like, when I die, I'm dead. Like, I want to experience life right now. I want to experience happiness right now. Like, and also, I hate saying but, and you're living your own life. Like, I get it. I resonate with your, conservative, like my parents are from Kenya. Again, it's very conservative, very like ultra Christian. And so the ideas of like queerness and like being gay and like it's not palatable in the same regard as it is, let's say, for like Western cultures and like white families. I mean, not to say that like there's not any difficulties, but like for some reason within the Black community, there's still a lot of strife and struggle in accepting a lot of our own. Like it's like if that person's gay, like that it's twice removed, yes, fine, good for them. But for some reason, it's like family members, they're like all up in your business, and they're like trying to convince you that you're not, and like trying to convince you that this and that and that, and you're not gonna have all the opportunities. And it's like, but for what and for why? Like, anybody can be successful. So the compulsory wow, that's a thing. That's a wiring. That's a brain wiring. You said that, and I'm like, I know so many people who probably experienced that, and they didn't have a name for it.
Yeah. And to say that I found this like 2-3 weeks ago at the most, and I was like, what? Like mind blown. There's a word for this, which is why I think language is so important, because when you can name something finally at last, and you're just like, that's what it is. I feel like that can help you to just kind of really, really start digging into like, what is that? Where can I start really like excavating and going deeper? So yes. But I love what you said about like that unlearning process. It's deep and profound and ongoing,
Yeah.
always ongoing.
Never ending, absolutely. As you mentioned, language is important. Like when you found the word queerness or queer, or when you even started to learn about words like bisexual and really, like you're saying, excavate, what were some of the like internal processes that were happening for you where you were like, oh, light bulb moment, this feels like it matches me? Or was it just kind of a matter of like, oh, okay, well, now that I can put a name to this thing, I can search here, and if it doesn't work, I can search here, and if it doesn't work, you know what I mean? Like, did you just stumble upon being like, oh, queer, yeah, that's totally what it is? Or was it like, am I this? Could I be that? Could I be this? And then through a bit of digging around, you were like, oh, this is the title or the category that works for me. Because I know even like categorization in itself is very limiting. And it's also the language that we use is very limiting as well. So, yeah, what's that been like for you?
I think for a long time I didn't name it. Simply because I didn't know what label to take on. And that's a time when a lot of labels was starting to come up with the bisexual, pansexual, queer, like fluid. There's a lot of labels out there for things now. And I think it was more of a trying on, oh, does this fit? Oh no, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm not quite with it. I'm just gonna like keep going. And what I do love about even just the term queer, queer is such a blanket statement. It can mean in almost just about anything within like the spectrum of sexuality, and it gives you room to still explore and evolve within that. So usually that's my primary like identifier. Um, Even like for example, I did tell my dad I was queer. Just looks down because it was an experience. And then I kind of had to just explain to him like, oh, and this is what it means. Like queer means I'm identified, well, I'm attracted to and like would be open to relationships to anybody like who's not a man, just like anybody else. I mean, to him, it's like man and woman, like that's it. But
Yeah.
but it's been interesting. And even in that, I feel like I'm still evolving because now for a long time I was comfortable with like bisexual, and now all of a sudden it doesn't quite fit right anymore. And I'm like, oh, what's happening now? I know there's this running joke within the queer community about like, oh, you figure out your sexuality and then all of a sudden your gender kind of like crops up. And it's like, what do you want to do with your gender? How do you want to now identify with that? But now I'm like, oh, I thought I'd been through this sexuality thing. I'm like, oh, so bisexual doesn't kind of fit anymore. So I'm back to kind of still being queer slash bisexual if people want like a definitive kind of term. Because whether for like understanding or taking that on. But even within saying bisexual, I know a lot of people think, oh, bisexual is you're just like attracted to men and women. There's a like further definition to bisexual, which is kind of yes, I'm attracted to men, women, but I'm also attracted to the same genders as me, and maybe somebody who's not of the same gender as me. So same and different, which opens that up to like non-binary folks or agender folks. Yeah.
I like that.
I like that. I like that redefining, and language is so important. And I think I like what you said about like, I mean, I say it because people just want to like confine, but that's another thing. It's confining again. Like, why do you need to be like, I'm bisexual? Why is queer not enough for you, for people to be like, okay, I can just walk away, but they're like, no, what type of queer? Oh gosh, I said that, and that was like so like triggering. Like, you know what I mean?
Queer
Like,
people do that too. It's like, oh, you're queer, but like,
what kind are you? Like,
Yeah.
I need more details. I need more like definitive terms.
right?
Yeah, they want to figure you out. I think that in society, we're always trying to figure each other out. Like, okay, well then, if you're defined as then this key, and that key fit you, so that I know, like in conversation, these might be your pressure points, these might be your other points. I mean, I think it's also a shortcut in many ways for people to kind of not have to get to know you. It's like, oh, okay, cool, you define as this. then I can assume like 60% of these things about you, and then I only really have to get to know you specifically at a 40% range. And I feel like that also comes out. I mean, I did a really small stint on OkCupid when I was single, and for me, that little small time that I spent trying to date and explore within the queer community, I was always left just looking at my phone like this, just like, what? I don't. Okay, this is this is a lot. So I want to find out from you, how has it been online dating, if you online date, or do you prefer to do like a in the socials date?
I feel like I'm like an in-person kind of human. I've tried online, and online just never works for me. I don't know if it's something about like not meeting in person that makes it very hard for me to connect. And even just conversating with somebody online is just, I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I'm a terrible texter too. And with Vancouver, where everybody's kind of like inconsistent and flaky, that's across the board. That's not just like the straight like online dating arena. It's everywhere. And when I first went online too, there were like a lot of white queers, mainly. That's all you saw online. I feel like now it's kind of gotten better. And even when I do say now, I do like a stint of maybe the most I've spent on an app is like a month. And then I'm just, because nothing ever works for me there. Anybody who I've ended up dating, it's always kind of been like somebody I met in person. And we connected that way and kind of just, I'm a no pressure hangouts. I like getting to know people and like exploring connections outside of the pressures of dating first. Even though people put so much like emphasis on like, oh, dating, you know, where your intention is with dating. But I feel like even then sometimes people aren't honest, right? So just looking at y'all's faces. Sorry, that's why I paused. I was like,
Alan's totally going through it now. She'll tell you why. Tell them why.
Oh, please
tell them why.
So yes, you're correct. People don't tell the truth. So I was recently catfished on the line, on the interwebs, on the online dating. Yeah, so it was a height thing. So like said that he was 6'5", he shows up, I'm like, sir, where's the rest of you? Because you look like you're 5'6", 5'7". Sir, where is the rest of you? I didn't say that. I just like 5 seconds to myself and said, it's a date, it's a story, let's go.
Wow.
And even when I was like, you know what, it's not going to be a thing, I didn't say anything because like I know with like the male ego fragile. I'm like, it's fine.
Well, he's even short.
Yeah, right. And I'm like 5'11". Like my parameters are 6'2" and up. So I just assume that you're taller and you're not. So anyways, you're right. As in like people sometimes do not tell all the truth on the line.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, I really like getting to know people outside of the pressures of dating, because then you kind of just, you really get to engage in getting to know a person just as a person. And I think one of the things I was going to bring up was I went to a workshop once. It was a polyamory workshop, even though I don't identify as polyamorous. And they were talking about like, oh, society has given us this like relationship escalator that we kind of set ourselves up on. So you meet somebody, you're like, oh, this is my person, this is the one. Let's define what this is. And then from there, we'll bring in awareness and exploration and then build off of that. Whereas what they were saying, well, yeah, what they said in this workshop was like, oh, what if you approached it differently? What if you first opened yourself up to like the exploration phase? And from there, you kind of figure out like compatibility or like what type of connection you want this to be, because they talked about different types of connections and you're just like, I've never thought about any of this. What type of connection it is, like how does it serve you? Do you both have like core values where you're matched, and exploring like, okay, what does it look like beyond that? And then finally, within a whatever amount of time, you can define what that is if you're comfortable. I have notes on it somewhere, but I remember that kind of like chain blown. Again, I've had a lot of mind blown moments. And being like, yeah, why don't we approach relationships like this? Why? I mean, I know why. Why do we have all these expectations that we set, and then we're so crushed and disappointed when those aren't met? It's because society has told us, like, this is what you need to do and navigate, and yeah, this is what you need to do and kind of set up to navigate yourself and have a partner for life. Yeah.
The attachment styles are wild that we're taught to
that
do.
too.
It's like,
That too.
oh, let's totally latch on to each other, and then we can like figure out, okay, well, I'm this type of person, or like, okay, well, I'm this type of person. I feel like a lot of the time in relationships, people really lose their independence. It's like you still have to cultivate your own personhood. You still have to be your own individual, saying, yes, you and me are going to have these goals together, but I have these goals, you can have those goals, but we're coming to make a mutual agreement to fulfill these specific goals together. I feel like we need to share that workshop with everybody, and we need to all be attending it, because that is some next level stuff. I feel like that's a really big way as to how we can help folks who are not taught to be more to lead with emotion versus lead with like societal norms, in order to develop that side of things. I mean, I'm talking about a specific group of people, but you know, we gotta not point any fingers.
As a person from that specific group level before, I get it. I was in there and she was talking about like the switching it up. I'm like, yes, absolutely, because certain groups of people will prioritize, you have to be in a partnership. You have to fit in this mold. You have to be, you're not a person, and you're not a whole person until you're in a partnership that looks like this. And then you have to fulfill these functions and duties, and then you're a whole person. So that's why I think on top of societal stuff, you have all these structural processes that say, if you're not hitting this mark, you're not successful as a human being and you're failing. So then we put all this pressure on the end goal and being like defining everything, and then we lose out on the experience and the process. Like, had I stuck to that, I would have been like, my guy, you're too short for me, I'm out. I now have a great story about catfishing that I can share with everyone. I went through the process of it, right? It's just like, cool. But like, you're right, we need to flip it on its head, like the dating, getting to know people. So I really like that. You got to share that with us.
Happy to send a link. I don't know if she still runs these workshops, because these was back in like, I was about to say 2020. No, we're skipping 2020. This was probably back in like 2018.
We're skipping 2020.
2018 or
I feel like
2019.
2020 skipped us. It was like, forget these humans. Just jump over them. Just jump over them.
Just
Okay, well,
forget.
we'll revive them. Black Women Connect Vancouver will revive them. Some fall events, some sessions, okay? Look out for some deeper understanding of your relationships. I feel like there's a lot that can be learned, as we can see in society, by like all of the things that would be quote unquote outside of the box. You know, when they say think outside of the box, but they don't really want you to think outside of the box, because they like to say that because it's cute. I feel like there's a lot to learn. Like, for example, you know, you mentioned polyamorous relationships. That that triggers the crap out of me, because I'm like, wait, no. Focus on me, just me. Don't try to focus on other people, because I have my own stuff with that. And I feel like the more and more that we can learn what those relationships actually are about, and what the structures of building it actually look like, it's more than just oh, you're going to get jealous of this person and that person. It's really about balancing all of these different aspects as well. So I know that you said online doesn't work for you and you meet people in person, but is it successful in Vancouver for you to date? Do you feel?
Even then, no. People, and I also think this is where people are like, oh, but queer relationships are so much better. I feel like people people perceive queer relationships as like this unicorn perfect thing. And like communication struggles don't happen in queer relationships. Like toxicity doesn't happen in queer relationships. I'm like, that's a whole lie. All those things you deal with in like straight or like heteronormative relationships, they still appear in like queer dynamics. It's just maybe for, I don't want to say most queer people, but for at least for the ones I've met and I've engaged with, a lot of that like self-awareness and self-healing has been a priority. A lot of that communication and like, there's a word I was looking for, but anyway, whatever. A lot of that like reconnecting after like some sort of like wounding, I guess, has occurred. I find that, at least for me, that's been a lot more common of like, oh, let's communicate and talk and like work this out in some way. And if you need space, cool. Let's check in like in some time. Like, how are you now? That's what I've appreciated about like, I guess, any kind of like intense crushes I've had or like dating I've tried to do. There's been a communication that has happened that I've never encountered in like when I was dating straight men, basically. And I was like, what is this? Because the first time I kind of got annoyed. I'm like, why are you trying to talk to me though? But then you kind of grow and evolve and you're like, oh my God, no, there's a repair that's like, that can happen. You don't have to stay friends with this person always, but you can if like that connection feels like it served something beyond just like romantic connection. And you can communicate about it and talk things through. If there's awkwardness, acknowledge the awkwardness, but also acknowledge the love. And I feel like a lot of my kind of queer dating has forced me to see kind of just like, oh, beyond just romantic connection, we've prioritized romantic connection so much and we don't need to put that much emphasis on it. Your friendships can be like even more like central to who you are. So I know at some point I had a term where I was just like, I was single. I'm just in love with all my friends because my friends are amazing. And I was really just trying to focus on myself and kind of do my own healing. And yeah, so within queer like dynamics, it's forced me to see beyond just like the romance and romantic connection. It's like, oh, how do you prioritize romance? Well, I guess like even what's reserved for like romance, so like the like affirming somebody like really, really well, gifting somebody like flowers, that can happen between friends too. Just be in love with your friends and prioritize them. I remember talking about like physical touch with one of my friends, and we were saying like, oh, why do we only reserve certain kinds of like, just like, especially if your love language, I guess, is like physical touch. Why is it that as friends, you kind of have to hold your friends like, here, you may not kiss your friends, you may not have sex with your friends, but like there's other forms of physical contact, unless they're friends with benefits, who knows? But like there's other forms
or
of like
entanglements.
or entanglements. Yeah, there's other forms of like intimacy we can still access within that and just share space, I guess, in that sense. And this is all something I've learned in queer spaces. So even though I can acknowledge that it can happen beyond that, this is where all my learning has happened. So for me, I give so much credit to like the people in my life who've on their own like self-learning and self-healing journeys have kind of like been open to like navigating with me in my own self-healing and self-learning journey and kind of create better connection in that sense.
Wow, I really like that. When you said that, like you were like, I'm in love with all my friends. It's funny. One of my best friends just had a baby, and kind of she's like in mamahood. And this past week, I'm like, the person that I talk to the most is now gone. And I actually videoed her today. I'm like, I'm recognizing now that you've been my partner in life for the past 2 years, and now I have to renegotiate and figure out, because she's been like my person, but in a non-romantic way. She's been my friend, right? So it's like you're right, like why are we prioritizing it just to be like between this like loving type thing? It's like I have so much love for all my friends. Melissa, yesterday we're at brunch and she was like rubbing my back and I was like, oh, that feels so nice. And she was like playing my hair, like, oh. And I was like, yeah, why not? I loved it. I was like, don't stop.
It feels so good.
I really love that. And I would agree with you as well that I've learned a lot in the queer spaces that I'm in. I feel like one of the things that my queer friends don't allow for is is like the disruption of a friendship for an argument. They're like, no, we are going to go to conflict resolution. We're just going to struggle through it, but we're certainly going to get there every time there's a bit of a hiccup or anything like that. Whereas with past relationships, it's been like, oh, it's a struggle. Peace. I'm done. Oh, we're out here. I'm out of this, And it's like, I'm really, really grateful for that. And, you really put that in perspective for me. I heard also recently from one of my other friends that there's this term called queer fishing, if I'm using it correctly. And I think it's this idea that people will say that they're queer, as the blanket term, to use it as a way to gain access into the community, but they're not necessarily within the community. So so I was going to ask you that, Nura, like, have you heard that term before, this moment?
This is the first time I've heard queer fishing of people trying to get into the queer community and they're not new. I've heard of queer baiting, like on TV shows, but
Oh,
queer
maybe that's
fishing,
what it's
no.
called. Maybe that's what it's called. What's queer baiting?
Queer baiting is when they do like on like TV shows or movies, they'll suggest queerness, but there's like no follow through, none of that. And so a lot of queer people will watch something just because somebody referred it and it was like, there's like a queer thing in it. But sometimes I think with queerness becoming like this popular thing, there's now like I guess a lot of shows are like kind of like going on with it. And so the the only like example I can think of is Bridgerton. um, where have y'all watched Bridgerton?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the queer baiting that happened there was like one of the brothers, he had like his artist friend who invited him to like those whatever those art get-togethers were. And so there were suggestions of him being queer, but there was like never follow through on it. And the show like season ended and you were like, what happened to that storyline? Like,
I didn't even pick that up when I watched it. I was just like, oh, it's just a regular, like, I wasn't expecting for there to be any kind of a queerness in Bridgerton. I was definitely expecting for whoever that lead person was, who is no longer the lead now, to be stripping down on some level. But that, I was like, heterosexual sex scenes, given, definitely gonna happen. But wow, I didn't know that there was. Wow, that's
Yeah, no,
interesting. So maybe it was queer baiting that my friend was talking about, and then I just kind of
well, that
morphed it
could be
into
a
queer
thing
fishing.
too. Like, who knows? People do weird things sometimes.
What were you
yep.
gonna say, Elle?
I was gonna say actually that character ended up in a heteronormative relationship. Like the character ended up with a woman after that. But not like in like a we're together, but like more in like a I'm just gonna like be an artist and sleep around, but only with women.
Oh, that happened? I didn't catch that.
Yeah. He said that, and
Oh.
I'm like, I can't remember him ending up with like a queer. He ended up in like an orgy with women, and then he ended up with like a woman as his companion. So yeah, queer baiting for sure. And also, fun fact that just found out today. Sorry, I love fun facts. The last 4 or 5 years for feature films have not had a queer lead.
Oh
in them, even though they've said that they wanted to increase diversity of like characters. I'm like, cool. So you're saying you're talking the talk, but you're not walking the walk. So I'm just gonna throw that out there as well.
And apparently similar to how like darker skin tone people can be like portrayed as villains, queer people when they are featured are usually portrayed as like the villains. And you're just like, what is all this?
They have to make them a threat. They have to make you a threat in order for the storyline to continue. That's absolutely rubbish. But isn't strong black lead changing that? I feel like stuff that's usually comes in under like strong black lead is changing that. Is it Lena Wade? Oh, mate. Is that the name?
Lena Waithe, yeah.
Yes, that's how you say it. Yeah. I feel like I'm there in a lot of lead shows,
But
or am I just
feature
fabricating
film,
that?
feature film, not TV shows,
Oh,
not Netflix, not streaming. Feature film.
Oh, yeah, I'm not expecting much from those. They
Fair.
still don't get Africans to speak in African languages. They still don't get Italians to speak in They still are out here portraying people and falsely tanning people. I'm not interested in it. So I'm not really expecting much from
whitewashing all the
those
things
movies.
too. They just can't
All the
expect much.
even in what was that other one? The one that we all loved, and they're not doing another season of it. The country, something country,
Love
county, something
country.
county,
Love country or whatever.
Oh.
Lovecraft County. Yeah, where they
I was
were.
so mad. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, are you serious? In the midst of this resurgence of like you and okay, clearly, even if the world is burning, people are not going to be like, oh, wait, we should actually change and not do this. It just doesn't make sense to me. But thank you for coming on to the podcast episode. I know the conversation's kind of been, whoa, I was going to say a little bit everywhere. And then my laptop's like, I got that sentence for you. A little bit everywhere. But I've really appreciated you being very open about your experiences as well. If you were to stumble upon this episode 3 years later or 3 years in the past, what kind of advice would you have for somebody who is exploring themselves? Yeah.
It's the baby careers. The young people who are just like, I don't know. Take your time. Take your time. Make sure you're comfortable. And you don't have to pick anything just yet. You don't have to define anything just yet. You don't need to rush into anything. This is a journey for you, basically. It's for you. It's at your pace. There are people who will encourage you and people maybe who will push you. And sometimes they'll push you because they want you to become your best self, but still always check in with yourself first. And if you don't have a community yet and you want that for yourself, call it in, because there is like queer family out there, or queer chosen family. That's been, I think, an integral part of my own queer journey. And make sure you're safe, make sure you're like good and grounded, and you're loved. There's a whole community of people who will love you regardless of whether you feel small or like on top of the world right now.
That's so sweet. Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. Do you have any last words before Nyarai goes?
I really appreciate you kind of highlighting all the lessons that you've learned in your queerness, in those spaces, because I feel like they are of value for literally every human being. And I just wish that everyone could get to a place where they're like really introspective and pushing the boundaries as to like what we know to be normal, quote unquote normal, how we interact with each other, how we love each other, and I mean that more like the romantic versus friendship, like it, like you said, people are loved no matter what, and they have your chosen path. I really appreciated that. That was great.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank y'all for having me. I can't believe this went by so quickly.
So what do they say? Time flies when you're having a good time, right?
Yes, yes.
Mhm. This has been really awesome. I will see you folks in the next episode. Oh no, I'm lying. Is there anything that you're doing coming up that folks should be looking out for? I know you
Oh,
mentioned that you're an artist, and I also saw that there's a specific new page on a specific new app. So tell the folks.
yeah. So I decided this year I got a pandemic epiphany, pandiphany, as I heard on a YouTube video, and I was like, oh, I want to create more. I want to do more art things. I was already in like writing, but art, I neglected my art. But yes, I'm also gonna be like building up my art, and I have created an Instagram page called Munamato Creates. So MUNA Munama MUNAMATO dot creates. So if anybody wants to check out my art, please do. I'm still very nervous about sharing it. But I'm trying to create like a whole series and then putting it up online and selling prints and trying to get paid as we all are.
And I've already seen some of the artwork and it's really gorgeous. I already know which one I want once you get your prints ready. So I'll be ready.
Really?
Yes, I'll be ready. I definitely want the one with the fro from the back. I feel like somebody's done a photo shoot with me like that, but I don't have that picture. So I'm like, actually, this reminds me of that. So yeah, I want that one once you're ready to release your stuff.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. I'll remember this and I'll reach out.
Awesome. It's been really incredible to have you. And we'll see you folks on the next episode of Girl You Know It. Bye.
Bye.
That was really lovely to have Nyarai on. I think I'm always nervous about these types of topics because, like I was saying before, my family watches the stuff like sporadically. So I'm always just like, I don't know which one they'll catch. I don't know if this is the one where I'll get. I'm always kind of waiting for a phone call or something in the back of my mind, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it hasn't yet. Maybe because I'm anticipating that they'll react in a way that they're not. So, but that was really awesome. How did you feel?
I really I really love that conversation. I didn't know what to expect coming into it and like what direction we would go, but I really appreciated the way that she kind of was like, I'm learning, I'm still growing, I'm still moving in my journey. And I love how she's like, this doesn't fit anymore. So like, let me find new language as best as I can approximate to like match where I'm feeling. And I feel like certain people get stuck and they don't know how to move, and like I appreciate that she's very like open to the experiences. That's what I learned a lot. And just yeah, those highlighted lessons, oh my gosh, I'm going to take them with me. I'm going to walk, I'm going to put them in my baggage, I'm going to walk with them, and I'm going to apply them to all the relationships that I have.
I love how you literally did a walking.
what,
Oh my
what did you
goodness.
what did you enjoy about the conversation?
Um, I think what I'm taking away from it is the new term that I learned. What is it again?
Compulsory
Is
heteronormative.
it compulsive? Yeah, compulsive heterosexuality or something like that. I feel like in some respects, the moment that Nyarai said that, I was like, oh, I was hit with so many memories. I was like, no, no, not right now, not right now. Of like instances where I feel like I thought that I had to be a certain way or like I had to be attracted to a specific type of person, and that a person outside of that is, wasn't good enough or was gay, and then that was a bad thing or whatever the case is. I feel like there's been a lot of things that even in growing up around family members, men who are seen as what's that word again? Metrosexual, I
Mhm,
think it
mhm.
was. Yeah, men who are seen as metrosexual, who care about the way that they look, who, might not be the masculine way of being in the world, and that, dating people who are emotionally there, which is not the typical masculine way, was a bad thing to do. And so I've experienced so many people in my family who've gone through different types of scenarios. And the moment those words were said, I was like, oh wow, this actually describes a whole part of my culture, like a whole subsection, which is really, really interesting and making me feel like my therapist is going to learn about this next time. Do I have a word for you?
I mean, but again, I think language and having that specific, those words, it helps to validate people's experiences, and it helps to not have you gaslight yourself thinking you're going crazy. So it's like, here's a word and I know that it's applied to me, and now I can move in towards healing. So I love that. Yeah. Well, we've had a journey. We've had a journey throughout this season of Girl You Know It podcast episodes. And as it is, this is our last one for the season. And so we appreciate you coming along for the ride, to listen, to make sure you hit subscribe and like and follow us on Girl That You Know It on the Instagram page and on YouTube. But yeah, we are so excited to come back to you in the fall with a whole new season, a whole new set of concepts, a whole new set of conversations, and all the guests. But we are so excited. Yeah. Hope you have a great evening, day, whenever you're listening to this, and we will hear and talk to you soon.
Yeah. Hopefully you come to all the events that we're hosting, because that's why we're stopping the podcast for the rest of the season, because we're out here hosting y'all in person. So don't just wait to watch us on YouTube. Come to the events, buy the ticket. Don't second guess yourself. Buy the ticket. Follow us, buy the ticket, hit subscribe yourself to the enjoyment. Come and enjoy yourself in the summer with us. We'd like you to
hashtag that. Subscribe yourself to the enjoyment.
Subscribe to the enjoyment. Hashtag subscribe to the enjoyment. But it's been really, really lovely. And we'll see you folks next season. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's always amazing to get an opportunity to chat with these lovely ladies. So if you're looking to follow us off of the podcast and you're looking to catch up with some of the content that we have, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube, all at Black Women Connect Vancouver. And we also have a website for you at blackwomenconnectvancouver.com, which is where you can sign up for our mailing list and our newsletter, so you can keep updated with our growth and all of the other events that we have planned for you. Catch you later. Bye.